I'm Mouse Del Sordo, and we are at another Zoomcast. But so I have Maurice Scott, and he's with me in the new studio of the Rowers Choice Network. Now, I had to Google Maurice Scott, and up pops a picture of him rowing the Potomac, the same body of water that I rowed on for the last 10 years. And I noticed that this guy comes on the show with a Potomac star on his chest. I'm excited for this podcast. Now, Maurice has been rowing for quite some time, but we're going to learn about his story, about how he got into our sport, how he's blossomed as a rower, and where he's taken his career. And we're going to touch on a topic of how do we get inner city kids, athletes, masters of all levels to come down to the water and row with us, rowers here in either Baltimore or other major cities like Philadelphia or Chicago. So Maurice, welcome to the show, man. Thanks for being here.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm excited for this one.
Me too, man. Me too. Now listen, I start every podcast the same. We go from stroke one to today, all right? And I want to know the story. And I think everybody else listening or watching this, they love to hear this kind of stuff. So walk me through when you took your first stroke, why you took that stroke, and how we are here today in this interview.
So pretty much back in fifth grade, which was like 2004, 2005, I was always like a kid that just enjoyed the water. I just enjoyed being around the water. It was something that attracted me. So anything that had to do with water that the opportunity was there to do, I would do it. I attended Maritime Academy. It's a middle school and high school in Philadelphia. And the school was actually focused on water and marine biology, anything to do with water, that was their focus.
Can I interrupt you really quick? Okay, so we're from the same area. I grew up in South Jersey, and I've learned to not say water. I've learned to say water. And I love that you are saying water, man. I have highlighted in my notes, you are a water kind of guy. So great, man. I love it. I appreciate it. Keep going.
Got to stay to the roots. But yeah, so the first sport that was introduced while I was at Maritime Academy was sailing. Never done that before, but I loved the water. So I was the first one to raise my hand to try that. The next thing was swimming. Tried that, loved that. It wasn't really like a competitive thing. It was more so teaching you how to do. So how to sail, how to swim. Yeah. But then back my fifth grade year, Bachelors Barge Club reached out to my school, my middle school, to do a 2-week learner row program. So of course I didn't say no to that. I always wanted to, try something new. I knew Boathouse Row, it was more so just kind of like an iconic picture. I didn't really know, what it was, but to be invited to, try out a program at Bachelors Barge Club for 2 weeks to try out what they're doing on the water, which, like I said, again, didn't know what it was. It was more so just an iconic picture that you drive by on Kelly Drive.
So let me ask you that. That's a really great point. So it's interesting. There are boathouses all over major cities, and people drive by, they have no idea what it is. Right? But then the moment you step into that boathouse and the moment you step into that environment, can you think back to when you first walked into that boathouse and what sort of feelings or emotions went through you? Because you're going from driving by 276 every day, right? And seeing that boathouse row and not knowing what it is to then walking in there. I mean, that's life-changing for some people. Can you remember that moment?
Honestly, I just remember walking in. It was kind of like it's so hard to explain the smell of like boathouses, especially being in the boat bay. It's like, I guess it's almost like a breath of fresh air, I should say. Like it was like the boat bay doors were open, and it was a perspective that I never seen before. Like I've always seen it from the outside, but I never saw it facing the water. Like I never saw from inside the boathouse, and to be able to see the city skyline. It was breathtaking, to say the least, and to see these massive boats in the boat bay, and just a ton of questions that are going through my head, like, what kind of boat is this? Like, when do I get to sit in one of these? Like, how do people row? When do I get to start? I was very, very eager to learn, especially, like I said, seeing it on the water and on the news all the time. They're like, hey, Kelly Drive is shut down. Lincoln Drive shut down, blah, 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 because, these massive races are going on. And of course, like I said before, didn't know what it was, but always knew that when there was a race, half the city was shut down because these massive boat trailers and everything were coming in. But to reel it back to, what you're asking about the feeling, I was just very, very, very eager to start. And it was just an amazing sight to see. Because I've never been introduced, like this was the first time that I've seen this sport, and like from where it starts, getting the boats out, and then where it also finishes, bringing the boats back in. It was just something breathtaking.
You're a Potomac guy. How about when you get on the Potomac Star dock and you walk over and you look to your left and you see the Kennedy Center, the bridge, and you see the monument in the background? I mean, you brought up a really good point that unless you walk through those doors down to the dock and you get that perspective of seeing the city from another angle, you really don't appreciate the sport. And it was me. I remember my moment when I saw Potomac for the first time. I rode by it every day at GW. And then my first walk in the Potomac was in 2010. And I knew immediately that I had to be there for the rest of my life. And that might be a way to get other athletes from around the world or other students. Like maybe the thing is do boathouse row tours and just come in, and maybe you get 2 or 3 kids really engaged in rowing because they get the same perspective that you had. You're right. It is a breath of fresh air. The old wood, the water, the I'm saying water almost. It's like I got a partner in crime here. This is funny. You walk to the water, right? And you smell that air. It's different air than it is on the highway or somewhere else. So I love the way you describe that. Now, all right, so you do this learn to row and you're a young kid. What happens next?
And pretty much I didn't really, as being in 5th grade, certain, I guess a lot of the issues that we see now today, as you get older, you start to see things through a different perspective. But as a kid, I'm not really, I do notice that, it's a bunch of older people at that time, particularly white males and females. I didn't really see anybody of color on the water. And the camp that I went to, it was maybe two more people of color that joined me. But honestly, just being, like I said, at 5th grade, that wasn't one of the first things I noticed. The first thing I noticed was the boats. And I guess my focus was, just getting into that boat. So it was being able to, go down there. First off, I had baggy shorts on, which was, as you know, probably the worst thing you could do getting into a boat. But of course, I didn't know that. Second thing, I had a pair of Jordans on. Yes. So, padded leather. I'm surprised my dad didn't kill me for wearing those, because if he knew the type of stuff that we gotta, get, and all the equipment we're moving and the screws and everything that's popping up out of nowhere, probably would have chose a different pair of shoes. But I also love my Jordans. So I wore those, and, I had a baggy t-shirt on. So of course, from the jump, I didn't look like a rower, of course, but nonetheless, I was, so excited to even just get hands on the boat.
Was it hard for you? So was it hard for you to be a man of color and be around a bunch of old white men and women? Was that how did you feel, or how did you connect to that sport right away? Was there a gap?
Now, there, for the 2-week program, it was more so, I think, my excitement of just being around the water and being around the boats, kind of I almost had tunnel vision. Most of what I saw was just the boats alone. And like I said, at 5th grade, I wasn't aware to, rowing being an elitist sport. I wasn't, that wasn't something that, I knew about. I just knew that, I had the opportunity to, hop in the boat, and that was the only thing that I knew. Now fast forward a couple years after the 2 weeks learn a row, because after that point, there was no other opportunity for me. There wasn't nothing that came, there was nothing that came out of that. I just thought, hey, I got invited to do this 2 weeks, and that's it. That's all I can do. So after that, I kind of settled into, different sports that was offered by my school, basketball, football, baseball, soccer, volleyball, just all those traditional sports, as they will call it, within my school. But you fast forward to 2010, 5 years later, 2010, 2011, that's when the ball started rolling. Philadelphia City Rowing came to my high school, which was Parkway Center City, and offered, hey, we're starting a public school rowing team for anybody in the school district of Philadelphia to join. And at that point, I knew, I remembered how I felt, back in 5th grade, and when I tried to do that Learn to Row program. And because this was also offered free of charge, it wasn't a financial burden on my parents. I was able to, hop in right away, signed up, was one of the first to sign up for that. And that was the first year that they've actually started. So that was, pretty cool to be, the first men's 8 for Philadelphia City Rowing. And, from there, that's when it took off. And like I said, the ball started rolling, and I started rowing competitively against other private schools.
How did you guys do that first year or two?
So that first year, we went to Philadelphia City Championships and won for the novice 8 for our first year. So that was
Hold on. You won your first year?
Yep.
You took gold at Philly. I mean, I think you know how important Philadelphia City Championships are to our sport. Like, it's a big deal, man, that you won.
That honestly, because we worked hard. Now at this point, I'm aware of, the diversity, quote unquote diversity within the sport. So that at that point, and also the socioeconomic within the sport as well, with the private schools, St. Joe's Prep, Mount Vernon Prep, Bonner, which was a school back when I was rowing. A lot of these big house schools for rowing, we realized, that none of them, or that I saw, had any people of color. We were literally the only boat that, was half white, half black. Like literally, it was 4 black guys, 4 white guys. Wow. So we were literally the only boat on the water that I can remember that had that. So it was almost like we had something to prove. We would go into locker rooms and like, hey, listen, just because St. Joe's Prep, these guys, are wrong all 4 years straight. You have guys, in my boat that it's everybody's first year. We've never had this before. So just because, they have that doesn't mean, we're out the picture yet. We just got to work. We just got to work harder.
Yeah, the skin color means absolutely nothing when you're both new to the sport, right? If you're both new to the sport and you're both walking into the same thing, it just comes down to who's the better athlete, who's the one that wants it more. I know this is a really hard thing to ask because this was like 10 years ago, but when you won that race, you crossed first and you win a medal. And I know that you come to the dock to get your medal at Philadelphia City Championships. Did that victory overpower any other feeling you've had in other sports up to that point?
Honestly, I've never won anything, to that degree, to see the stands full of people and to have your hard work pretty much showcased at the end in front of all these people at the grandstands. It's a totally different feeling. And I guess it's almost like, a football stadium to football, or soccer stadium to soccer, like the noise, and like you can hear the noise, like you can hear the cheers in the background. And, once they put that medal on, and then you get the big trophy and plaque and everything, it's just like we really did it. We went from not knowing what rowing even was to winning the championship for the novice 8, the men's novice 8. And like Philadelphia City Rowing, this program just started. Like the day I started was the first time that Philadelphia City Rowing has had a practice. So for it to take less than a year for us to get from, that starting point to city championships, I mean, it was like, I just knew like we did it, and we did it as a team. It's the ultimate team sport. And I don't think that I've ever been on a more closely knit team than, Philadelphia City Rowing.
It was last year we had donated Rowers Choice and the nonprofit extension. We donated a boat to Philadelphia City Rowing. It was a Vespoli 4 that we completely refurbished, and I was on the dock when we gave it to them, and there were probably 50 kids that came down to say thank you, and we had the coaches and we had all these people. Kroger Oars helped us, donated oars. NK donated a Cox box. When we donated that boat, it looked brand new. We completely refurbished it. The excitement from these athletes was incredible. I mean, seeing that and seeing their faces it just made it all worthwhile for us. And for me, I'll never forget that moment. But there's one moment that I'm picturing in my head, because I had won some Stotesbury medals. I had done that Philadelphia circuit back in the early 2000s. You're right. You pointed something out that I don't think I never really like quantified, is the hard work that you put in is showcased at the very end. So when you're racing down that course in Philly and you have the stream of people in the grandstands, you could literally feel them screaming as you're rowing, right? You can literally feel the excitement. And then when you get to the dock, because of the way it's pitched up, you're at the bottom of that stand. You're inundated with noise and excitement and admiration, and that right there has just captivated you as a rower. Like, you don't ever want to lose that feeling again. And you very rarely get that same feeling in any other sport, right? Like, you have to win a national football championship to get that kind of excitement, but you get that kind of excitement in a local Philadelphia race. Like, that's amazing, right?
Right.
And that's what's getting started. So you do 4 years, or I guess 4 years at Philadelphia City, right? Or is it 3?
Two. So it was 2, because I was a junior when I first started. So,
okay.
So it was late, like I said, late to the game, my junior year. So I did it for 2 years. But after that year, I went to the U.S. Naval Academy's rowing camp, and was invited to join their varsity lightweights. So went there, and that summer, summer of 2011. Yes. I went there, and I believe it was like a week. And pretty much after the camp, working my behind off. All these athletes are 4-year athletes, all of them, from schools. Like, these are some big lightweights, and big name lightweights at that time. So, I'm competing, doing erg testing, racing each other. Like, it was nonstop competitive from start to finish at their camp. But to be able to, to have somebody that's been there 4 years, and for me to keep up, it was just, like I said, that was another empowering moment for me, because I can tell you right now, amongst that group of, varsity lightweights, I had the least experience. Like,
no, that's a guarantee. I mean, I'm pretty sure I know that year, because I was coaching Bishop O'Connell at the time. Mm-hmm. So I know the story of PCR, and I know that era that you're talking about, because I'm a little bit older than you. But so what did you do after high school? Did you row in college? Did you continue rowing?
So after the camp, I was recruited by Steve Perry at the time at the Naval Academy to go to the Naval Academy for the lightweight team. So pretty much after I graduated 12th grade year, I went to the Naval Academy prep school. They sent a lot of their recruited athletes there just to get a little bit more of a foundation academically to, be prepared for the rigors of the Naval Academy, as well as being a Division I athlete once you take that next step. But 2 weeks, 2-3 weeks before graduation, I had everything squared away. They medically disqualified me, as they called it. So
Wow.
pretty much, yeah. So pretty much after, once they initially did that, I went and, spoke to there was a retired Navy captain. He was actually in charge of one of the hospitals at one of the major naval bases. And, I had him, reevaluate me. And he pretty much, wrote a long letter stating that it was a misdiagnosis, allowed me to, go join my class and, what I rightfully earned from the prep school to go to Annapolis. So I did that. I wrote myself a long letter and sent pretty much a petition packet to the Naval Academy. But unfortunately, there were some people that did want me, but somebody higher didn't. So at that point, I graduated from the prep school, but I was only one of the two that, graduated but didn't move further.
Wow.
So I ended up going back home, didn't know what to do because this was late in the game. I found out about this probably middle of May. So, college admissions are already starting to roll. People already apply for colleges that they're going to attend in August. So, I was pretty much stuck trying to figure out what I was going to do. Community college was going to be a thing with other local colleges in Philadelphia. I was going to attend, but one of I attended a church, United Tabernacle Baptist Church in Philadelphia. And they have a close relationship with Arcadia University. So somehow things work in mysterious ways. One of my neighbors at the time met with somebody that is pretty high up in admissions and diversity at Arcadia University. And, to make that long story short, I was able, with, my background and everything and my academics, I was able to secure a full scholarship at Arcadia University. So, I, off the skin of my teeth, and it like I said, it was a race to the finish because I had to get a bunch of stuff done before, that start date in August. So I attended Arcadia. Pretty much, I volunteered with Philadelphia City Rowing and, teaching novices how to row and during the summer camps and everything, but I kind of gave up rowing because I worked so hard, with, the Naval Academy and just being able to, get recruited to that school just after a year was like, it hurt me a lot. And it wasn't really a good time for me within those 2 years, but I kind of, had a realization that nobody's pretty much going to baby me. Nobody's going to get me to where I want to be. I have to do that myself. And so that second year, my sophomore year at Arcadia University, I was like, you know what? I'm going to start, getting back into it, sending video footage of me rowing and everything to, across the country. So I ended up doing that, and I got re-recruited by a couple schools in the country again. But then I was like, you know what? I kind of wanted to take a step further. So I started doing some research, and I was like, you know what? I want to do this thing overseas. I want to just go and just go somewhere new and just, kind of like just take over and show like that I have something to prove. So there was opportunities for me, to go pretty much any country that I wanted to go to on a full scholarship. And I was like, you know what? I want to go to the farthest place I can go. So that destination was Sydney, Australia. So I ended up my junior year leaving stateside to go to the University of New South Wales in Sydney, Australia, and compete with their rowing team. I was the first African American to ever row for their university program. I raced at the university games, the Australia University Games with them in the men's 8. Raced numerous times with them, won a lot of stuff, over there, and just that, like, just went off. That's how I would just say I just I thought about, and every time I practice, I thought about what happened to me, at Navy. And I'm just like, you know what, I'm really going to prove that, it was their loss, not mine. And like I said, I've racked up over 10 wins out of like 10 wins, and I want to say like 15 podium finishes out of like 21 races. So I just, like I said, it was just one of those things where I just had something to prove.
Yeah, I got to stop you. Your story is ridiculous. Like I can't even follow what you're doing right now. You just, the word that comes to mind is perseverance. And there was a bit of anger, right, in what happened to you at Navy. You're like, I don't want that to happen again. But you're a guy that saw rowing in 5th grade. You liked it. You jump into a boat junior year, and less than 3 years later, you're flying to Australia, and you're the first African-American competing for the school. This is insane, man. This is an insane story. Like, I'm literally on the edge of my seat right now. So you win these medals, you do this really well. I have a million questions that we probably won't get to here today, but what happens after New South Wales? Like, what happens once you graduate from that program?
So after I came back, I ended up. So I stayed for a year at that program. Came back home. One of the big reasons because they didn't have my major, so I had to finish back stateside. So once I came home, what I wanted to do was just I wanted to keep this ball rolling and keep this momentum going. So I ended up joining Undine Barge Club on Boathouse Row, Boathouse 13. The castle-looking one, as people like to call it. And I also joined my school, Arcadia's cross-country team. So in the mornings, I was training with, Undine's competitive team, and in the afternoons, I was training with the cross-country team for the university. So I wanted to, do both just to, upstart my pretty much my endurance, my physical nature. Because I knew once I graduated, I wanted to, compete at Club Nationals that year. So I was doing that all the way up. I got injured in around December. I strained a ligament in my knee. So I had to take, like a month or two off. But once I was back, I was in full swing of things again. And then I competed at Club Nationals for the first time that year, which was in Ohio. And that was another story in and of itself, because I didn't know. This is the first time that I've ever raced sculling back in, stateside. I did all of the sculling over in Australia. So I'm just like, this is brand new to me. First time I've ever heard of Club Nationals. So I competed in the double, the men's double, as well as the quad. And after that race, we, through the time trial, we placed in 12th. So we, barely got in, but during the semifinals, we placed 7th out of like 40 or 50, doubles that was, entered in the race. So that was, pretty cool. And, a lot of guys, this is a funny story that I was thinking. A lot of people, they see guys, bigger than them, muscular, toned, and they're like, man, I don't know if I'm gonna beat these guys. I don't know, I don't know if I'm going to be able to compete. But we had, guys like that in those races, and particularly the men's double. I remember racing, OKC's High Performance Center. And, from the start of that 2K to the finish, like, we just took off. If you look at pictures with me and my doubles partner and OKC, like, these dudes are, huge. But we, like I said, there was really no competition once we passed that 1,000-meter mark. Like, it was open water from there. And the same thing with the quad. So, like, just being able to compete with these guys, and OKC has, a pretty good program. And I'm just like, you know what, I want to, continue to take this step further and continue to train, because it seems like there's literally an upward incline from here. There really isn't any way to go backwards.
So now, so you're doing this racing and stuff. Like, what are you doing now? Are you still competing? So you still training? You still rowing? Like, I think that you're in the police department, right? Like, you have a career in the police department.
yeah, so that started after, after I graduated. That was another thing that, I wanted to get, become a part of. My dad's a Philadelphia police officer, so that's always, kind of been in my blood. But I was a global security / criminal justice major in college. So I studied the way, policing worked in America, and I kind of wanted to use that to get me into, some type of law enforcement agency. I felt as though being, being particularly a Black African-American male within that profession, I kind of wanted to make a difference doing that. I know a lot of guys growing up in Philadelphia, and I know a lot of people, that don't like police officers, but I wanted to, just say, you know what, I'm going to do this, and, show that what's being portrayed by the media was being, with the stereotype of a police officer. I want to, go against that. And I want to, help bridge that gap. And I also looked up to my father because he did that in Philadelphia. So I wanted to do that as well. So I started after, Club Nationals. I went down to DC and joined a police agency down there. And from there, that's when, my law enforcement career started. Now, as you were saying, it's hard to keep up. I ended up after that, being with that agency for some time, that door closed, pretty soon. So I ended up, having to work a couple different jobs here and there. And then I had an opportunity to move to New York to coach Row New York as their Brooklyn Novice coordinator for their Brooklyn team. So I
like trying to map it.
Honestly, it's literally like it's almost like my life is like it's shown me different things, but doors have closed in order to bring me back to somewhere else. It's like when I picture it, it's almost like just printing out MapQuest directions, messing up, and then realizing, oh, this wasn't the way I was supposed to go, and backtracking almost. So yeah, so I went.
The funny thing you just said, you said MapQuest directions. Some people listening to this don't even know what MapQuest is. Like some of the younger kids, they have no idea what that is. This is funny. So you did Row New York, but it's like, so what are you doing on your day-to-day right now? Like, you are in law enforcement in, I think, Virginia, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And do you still row at Potomac? Are you still taking strokes?
Yes. So pretty much, with everything going on, everything's pretty much locked down. But with that right there, I pretty much, my whole focus is learning to balance being able to be a competitive rower while being, a police officer. I'm working, 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. So it can be really difficult at times to, get that motivation and get that energy to, still compete and still train. So at this, point in time, I'm working, and then right now with everything shut down, I'm running, doing circuits. But if everything was open back up, pretty much on my days off, I would be rowing with Potomac. I'm on the water, and on the days that I do have to work, I'll compensate and try to run or do a circuit during the times in between my shifts.
Who are you rowing with at Potomac? Like, who are you in a boat with?
So I'm with the scullers, the open scullers at Potomac. So typically I'll row, like, doubles have been the boat of choice, it seems like. But we also have a couple of lightweights on the team as well. So that's I think that's going to be a big boat that we push towards the end of the year. And yeah.
Let me ask you this, because I know Potomac extremely well. Like, it is, and I've been to many events. I've rowed in that club every day for years. You have to be one of the only men of color at that boathouse. Does this, you're I can tell you are an advocate for change. Do you have a hard time being in that club, like as the only person of color? Does it bother you? Does it make it uncomfortable? How can we get more people of color coming to that boathouse? These are questions that just pop in my head.
Right. And I anytime I go there, that's always in my mind. I never let it affect me to the point where I can't train, but it's always in my mind, and I always try to brainstorm different ways of getting people into the boathouse. With Potomac, I'm still learning the way they operate, and I think a perfect example, I wouldn't say perfect, but a very good example of, being able to get people into the boathouse is just it's just opening the doors. When Boathouse Row, Schuylkill Navy, they've started to really, expand and really try to get more people of color, inner city individuals into the sport, just by inviting and, doing different types of events that they host to, invite pretty much the city to attend. And, I've seen, like, now that I go on Boathouse Row, like, there's going to be a time where I will see somebody of color on the water, and it's empowering to see that, because before, when I first started, there was none. But now when I go back, I'm seeing it's growing and growing and growing. And it's just, like I said, it's just opening the doors, kind of like taking away the if you need to be rich and white to do the sport, taking away that whole aspect, that whole, I'm elite and I'm like this and I'm above, everybody. Now, don't get me wrong, rowing, I feel like rowing is a very, it is an elite sport, but not the way that it was portrayed before, as in, like, if I'm rich and I'm white, that's the elite. No. I think people need to realize the sport is elite because of what we have to go through, putting our body through, different types of pains and being able to push for that next stroke. I've never played a sport, and I've played a ton of sports that you have to push through. There's no timeouts, there's no substitutions, there's none of that from start to finish.
Let me you're what, 27? Maybe.
So I turned 26 in like 2 months.
Jesus Christ. Okay. There's two things that you just said that nobody on this podcast in the 4 months that I've been doing this has said. Are you ready for this? It's incredible. One, it's as simple as opening the door. You want people to come and be part of the sport, open the door. That's it. You don't that you just start at the simplest point, right? And everyone is always overthinking the situation. They're overthinking, like, oh, you have to be really sensitive, and oh, you have to watch what you say. No, you just need to open the door and say, why don't you come on in for a day, see what we have to offer. If you like it, which I can guarantee that you'll get a 10% success rate on that, right? You'll get 10% of the people that come in to want to be a part of it. And the other thing you said was that the sport is elite because of what we do, not how much money we have or our status in the environment or the community. It's elite because we bust our asses to be successful at the sport. And I gotta tell you, man, I've been doing this for 21 years, like almost as long as you've been alive. And I have never narrowed it down to those simple statements. And that is incredible. And I'm learning a lesson today from Maurice Scott, a 26-year-old rower. I learned a lesson today. I think that's wonderful, man. But my last question before we close off, because I'm going to invite you on more podcasts because there's a lot more that we can talk about. But I want to know, at 26, someone who has traveled the world for rowing, it's changed your life, obviously. What do you say to Maurice Scott when he was in 5th grade? What do you say to the young boy walking into the boathouse who's a 5th grader? What do you say to him to try to get him part of their sport?
I would say regardless of what, is thrown your way, don't quit. You deep down inside that this is what you want to do. You have to want to do it regardless of the environment, regardless of the people you see. You have to go after it and show the world what you're made of.
Let me I want you to say, or what I'm looking for you to say,
Mm-hmm.
is this sport is going to change your life. That you can keep playing basketball, you can keep playing baseball, you can try those other things, but this sport will give you the admiration and excitement that you've been looking for. It'll give you the elite level feeling that you've been looking for. Because that's the message from all these notes that I've taken. And Maurice, I take a lot of notes when I do this, and I paint a picture, right? And what you're telling me is that the sport, when you were in 5th grade and you saw it, it allowed you to change your life forever. Dude,
Yep.
I'm just going to
Yep.
paint your resume one more time here because this is ridiculous. You tried sailing, you tried swimming, Bachelors Barge, which is one of the most historic boathouses in America. It is. You then jump in a boat and you win your first championship as a novice with PCR. You then travel to New York. You get recruited by the Naval Academy. It didn't work out, and you persevered. You went to Australia. You win countless medals over there. You place top 7 in the club level of rowing. You get the feeling of a cheering crowd. You're in the law enforcement, and you're training at another elite level. What other sport in this world could provide that for you as a young man? You're shaking your head. There's nothing.
Nope.
Exactly. It's an incredible story. I love what you're saying. And again, you taught me something, and I'm going to take that to the next group of and the next area of my life. So, Maurice, man, I really hope you enjoyed doing this with me today. And I'm excited for people to learn your story, and I'm excited for people to maybe learn something, and maybe they're in 10th grade or they're listening and they're young coaches, and they say, you know what, I want to make this my profession and
Mm-hmm.
take a piece from your page, your book. So, Maurice, thank you for being here. I really appreciate your time. I think everyone else is going to appreciate it. And this is Alex Del Sorda, another Rowers Choice Zoomcast. Thanks for watching.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
This is the Rowers Choice Podcast. Rowers Choice is made up of Finish Line Shell Repair, Resolute Racing Shells, and Sykes USA.